The silence in the principal's office was thick enough to choke on, broken only by the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of my fingers drumming against my coffee mug. Across from me sat Daniel, a 15-year-old prodigy who could code circles around Silicon Valley veterans, his face a mask of bored indifference. Beside him, his parents, their faces etched with a mixture of frustration and desperation, looked on, their usual parental pride replaced by a weariness that spoke volumes.
"He's hacked into the school system again, Ms. Miller."
Principal Thompson sighed, rubbing a hand over his tired face.
"This time, he's changed everyone's grades, reprogrammed the cafeteria menu to only serve pizza and ice cream, and, well, let's just say the morning announcements haven't been quite the same since he replaced them with questionable memes."
Daniel, the bane of my existence and the most brilliant student I'd ever encountered, just shrugged, a smug smirk playing on his lips.
It was a boredom mitigation exercise.
He drawled, his voice dripping with a sarcasm that would make Oscar Wilde proud. Daniel was a walking paradox, a technological genius trapped in the body of a bored teenager. He aced every test, solved complex equations in his sleep, and could code a self-driving toaster with his left hand tied behind his back. But the traditional classroom, with its rigid structure and rote memorization, held about as much appeal as a dial-up modem. So, he rebelled. His acts of defiance, however, weren't the typical teenage shenanigans of graffitied lockers and skipped classes. They were acts of digital subversion, ingenious pranks that showcased his technological prowess and drove the school administration to the brink of a nervous breakdown. I'd tried everything, engaging his intellect with advanced coursework, challenging him with complex coding projects, even appealing to his apparently non-existent sense of responsibility. Nothing worked. Daniel, like a digital Houdini, always found a way to break free, his boredom a potent force that wreaked havoc on our carefully ordered school system. This latest stunt, however, had crossed a line. Tampering with grades and disrupting the school day was one thing, but his latest masterpiece, a virus that threatened to wipe the school server clean, was a different beast altogether. "Daniel," I said, my voice firm, "you're playing with fire. This isn't a game. This could have serious consequences." He met my gaze, his eyes, usually filled with mischief, hardening with a challenge I hadn't seen before.
"Then make it interesting."
He said, his voice a low murmur.
"Challenge me. Give me a reason to actually care."
His words, laced with an arrogance that would make even the most seasoned tech CEO blush, hung in the air. And then, an idea, as audacious as it was risky, sparked in my mind. "All right, Daniel," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "You want a challenge? I'll give you one." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of late nights, frantic coding sessions, and more than a few moments of self-doubt. I created a virtual labyrinth, a digital fortress designed to test Daniel's skills to their absolute limit. It was a series of puzzles, encrypted messages, and ethical dilemmas, all hidden within a virtual reality simulation that mimicked a high-stakes cyber espionage thriller. The rules were simple: solve the puzzles, crack the codes, and navigate the ethical minefield within the allotted time. And he'd win his freedom from detention, from extra credit assignments, from the soul-crushing boredom that fueled his rebellion. Fail, and he'd face the full wrath of the school board, his future as a high school student hanging precariously in the balance. Daniel, to his credit, rose to the challenge. He approached the task with a laser-like focus I hadn't seen before, his fingers flying across the keyboard, his eyes glued to the screen. Days turned into nights as he navigated the virtual world, his progress monitored by yours truly, a mix of trepidation and grudging admiration swirling in my chest. And then, just when I thought he'd cracked the final code, he stumbled. The last puzzle wasn't a technological hurdle. It was an ethical dilemma, a choice between personal gain and the well-being of others. Daniel, used to operating in a world of ones and zeros, where right and wrong were as clear as lines of code, hesitated. He saw the faces of his classmates, his teachers, his parents flashing across the screen, their fates in his hands. And in that moment, I knew I'd reached him. Daniel, the codebreaker, the master of the digital universe, finally understood the human cost of his actions. He didn't solve the puzzle. He chose not to. The virtual world dissolved, and Daniel sat back in his chair, his shoulders slumping with defeat, his face pale. He'd lost the game. Or had he? In that moment of vulnerability, of choosing empathy over ego, Daniel taught me a far more valuable lesson than any textbook ever could. He taught me that even the most brilliant minds need guidance, that rebellion is often a cry for connection, and that sometimes the greatest challenge is not conquering the digital world, but understanding the complexities of the human heart.